Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to Social Value Matters 2020, our first ever online global conference. This year, Social Value International have been thrilled to work with Social Value Canada to bring you this incredible conference over 5 days. We hope that you've enjoyed both the Leadership Summits and the Practitioner Summits and have found them all interesting so far. Please note that the session today has been pre-recorded by the fantastic speakers that we have. You can enjoy watching this session, and below on the screen further down, there is a question box where you can ask questions. Please note that due to time differences, speakers will not always be able to answer your questions straight away, but please do check back because they will get back to you as soon as possible. Now, without further ado, we'll start today's session. I do hope you enjoyed the session and hope to see you soon at another one of our sessions. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to participants from around the globe. We're glad to have you join our session. I am Ed Pinero, president of EcoMetrics LLC and an advisor with Restore the Earth Foundation. I will be the moderator for this session entitled Social Value Principles and Restore the Earth Foundation's EcoMetrics Methodology. The panel will discuss a unique angle to social value in that it will explore how nature contributes to society and brings social value. We're very fortunate to have three esteemed and expert panelists to discuss views and examples of how nature-based solutions and leveraging ecosystem services can bring social value to a wide suite of stakeholders. We will also touch on the specific methodology of EcoMetrics, which can quantify and value social benefits from such projects and activities. Having incorporated the SVI principle into its EcoMetrics platform, Restore the Earth Foundation offers this comprehensive methodology for partners and cross-sector clients to demonstrate the monetary value of nature-based solutions. The panelists will each speak from a different perspective. First, we'll have Anastasia Bayer, Anna. She's an associate carbon director in the corporate sustainability group with Dow, and she will discuss how Dow has used natural solutions, specifically carbon sequestration, to address corporate commitment. Dow makes the business case for investing in such projects by showing the value that it brings to not only Dow itself, but to its shareholders, stakeholders, and partners. A very interesting example is Dow's carbon partnership with the International Olympic Committee to mitigate unavoidable operational carbon footprint of the IOC. Then we'll hear from Dr. Terry Ma, and it was Dr. Anastasia Bayer, by the way. So now we'll hear from Dr. Terry Ma, co-founder of Thalas Water Advisors and founder of the Malabar Group. Terry will touch on how being able to value the co-benefits of nature-based solutions can encourage water infrastructure investors to participate in such projects. Sometimes the big picture of seeing how co-benefits supplement the primary expected benefits of a project can actually make the difference. And finally, but by no means least, we will hear from Michael Bowdy, Director of Regenerative Energy and Land Management at Silicon Ranch Corporation. Michael will discuss their unique approach of combining solar farm development with regenerative agriculture to strive for maximum value of these kind of projects. Silicon Ranch applied the EcoMetrics methodology at a site to quantify and value all of the benefits associated with this kind of work, to be able to demonstrate what value it brings to the investors, partners, in their case, the power off-takers and local communities. And this information will help Silicon Ranch get the investor and stakeholder cooperation and buy-in necessary to be able to do even more projects like this and bring even more value. Each of the speakers will have about 12 to 15 minutes of remarks. Then I will ask them each a question. As this session has been recorded, if you have a question, please submit it as instructed by the conference staff, and we will strive to get you an answer as soon as possible. And then I'm going to ask the panelists to each take the first minute or so of their time to add any further introductions about themselves as they wish. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Anna.
Well, thank you, Ed, and thank you for the invitation to participate in on this panel. Indeed, I'm personally looking forward to learning more on the water issues, as that's becoming a little bit more of a focus area for Dow. But for the purposes of today's panel, as Ed had mentioned, I will talk about the project that I was heavily involved in my last job at Dow, which ended about a month ago, and but it's obviously very closely connected to my current role as Ed mentioned, as a carbon director in the corporate sustainability group. And I think I'll speak on behalf of everyone in the audience that climate change is probably the most critical issue that humans are facing today. Between a global pandemic, a 5-year-old flood in my own hometown, which is kind of second in the last 3 years, crazy to think about it, civil unrest in response to racism, inequality, and justice, all these wildfires raging across the world, hurricane season is upon us. It's almost like the world is telling us that we need to do better and we need to do more for our planet. But how do we take this urgency and translate it into an action, or better yet, many actions across the globe? To start, Dow's take on this is that we need a holistic approach to solving these issues as interconnected and not at all as separate or isolated problems. And that's where collaboration comes in. So the idea of collaboration, of course, for a more sustainable future is not new news by any means. But through the course of our alliance with Restore the Earth, as part of Dow's carbon partnership with the IOC, we recognize the importance of several factors that we think are very critical for the partners to align on to maximize their collective impact. And those factors are having the right platform to create visibility for the work you're doing and magnify the impact. It's important to align on values. Equally as important, it's critical to have, or maybe even more critical, it's important to have a quality measurement framework that could quantify the impact, and ultimately everybody in the collaboration should have a sense of urgency. So we talk about the urgency, right? I think there's enough indicators out there that we really need to step up our game in here. But what does Olympics, sports in general, have to do with Dow, and how come a large material science company is investing into nature-based solutions to generate third-party verified climate benefits? Let's talk about sport first and the platform it provides. The average Joe and Jane don't spend much time walking, thinking, contemplating how some resin technology contributes to recyclability, or what type of trees are best for maximum carbon capture. But Joe and Jane probably follow sport, making it the perfect unifier to inform, invite, and challenge audiences to act against climate change and consider the power of trees. So Dow's partnership with the IOC was built on exactly that, using the platform of sport and the power of science to encourage collaboration among organizations to quantify, reduce their environmental impact, and to play a transformative role in their respective markets. Since the beginning of our carbon partnership with the Olympic movements, which actually started back in the Sochi Olympic Games with Sochi Organizing Committee in 2014, through this carbon partnership, we've generated over 5 million metric tons of third-party verified carbon reductions through a variety of projects that were implemented throughout the world, all creating economic and social value along with carbon and leaving a positive legacy locally while also inspiring and driving change globally. Along with having a platform, it's critical for partners to align on values and have shared values. The same way a house divided cannot stand, a collaboration without shared values will likely crumble. To create the holistic approach to climate and social issues, we must look at and learn from nature. At least that's been Dow's conviction since a while back. In fact, back in 2015, Dow launched our 2025 sustainability goals, which we're currently halfway through. And among those is our unique valuing nature goal. It's a first ever commitment by a large corporation to systematically consider the nature in its business decisions on such a major scale. Good for business, good for environment became our motto, along with innovation is in our DNA and the ambition to become the most inclusive material company in the world. Combined, these values is what led us to Restore the Earth as a partner when we're looking for a reforestation project opportunity to include into our carbon IOC portfolio. They're yet another organization with big vision and a strong innovative spirit. But what drew us to Restore the Earth was also the fact that they didn't just offer a vision. They also had a lot of solutions elements lined up. They had a shovel-ready project in Pointe-aux-Chenes, Louisiana, They had a very solid science-based foundation to their reforestation activities in the form of their eco-grown trees. And equally as important, if not most important for us, they offered a way to quantify carbon benefits, but also additional environmental benefits and social benefits from a reforestation project using their EcoMetrics. When we started our conversations a few years back to explore this alignment and understand whether we can create a partnership, it very quickly became apparent that we have a winner. Not only Restore the Earth could help us generate carbon reductions that we retired towards the IOC partnership, we were also able to pursue water quality reductions through the program with Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. We were able to claim impact towards our Dow's internal accounting on the valuing nature goal. And we certainly did take advantage of the enhanced relationship that we were able to build with local parishes in Louisiana, all of the places where who are really our neighbors to some of the Dow's largest manufacturing facilities in Gulf Coast. On the other hand, the unique social visibility of the sports platform and the Olympics specifically as a brand that we could offer to Restore the Earth was recognized by them as a way to enhance visibility of their amazing nature restoration work and to bring more of that social lens to their reforestation projects. While we didn't directly account or claim the social benefit value here, or SROI as it's defined by EcoMetrics, we've certainly taken advantage of the stacked benefit concept when making our business case internally to get the project funded. And I'd say this was the most critical element that allowed us to unlock the budget and ultimately contribute to reforesting 400 acres of historic bald cypress in the Pointe-aux-Chenes region in Louisiana, where we've published several case studies and stories to articulate the total estimated value, again by EcoMetrics, of 22 million of environmental, social, and economic value in the region. This collaboration also represents a greater commitment within Dow to not only reduce emissions, ours and our value chain partners and even other downstream, but to adopt green infrastructure and implement green infrastructure within our own operations around the globe. And in many cases, we do so alongside with the traditional gray infrastructure. The two do not contradict, we don't believe so. In fact, we always find whenever we create opportunities for green infrastructure to be incorporated in our sites, we find they complement the traditional engineering that we used to rely on. However, being able to reliably quantify the total value of such green infrastructure projects and to show that to internal stakeholders to be able to secure funding in competition, of course, with a whole bunch of other projects that are always on the docket, it's really critical to have tools like EcoMetrics. Because remember, we're dealing with a large chemical corporation, right? And we have lots of chemical engineers and plant operators that are used to doing things a certain way. That being said, the valuing nature and the realization that nature is part of our future and part of our path has taken roots within Dow, and I'm happy to say it's not going anywhere. From valuing nature to creating successful collaborations, to me, the key to addressing inequality and creating a more sustainable future together is in this holistic approach, a multi-stakeholder, multi-value view. That's nature's way, right? And we all need to learn from it. So for Dow, that means simultaneously delivering on our sustainability, inclusion and diversity, and innovation goals, while also providing outstanding service to our customers. That's all I have for my remarks, Ed, and I will pass the ball back to you.
Joanna, that was a fantastic start to our discussion. And as I mentioned, at the end of the three panelists, we'll have a couple of questions for each and any other closing remarks. But right now, I'm going to move over to Terry to see if he can add to the story.
There we go. Thanks, Ed. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel with Anna and Michael, and pleasure to see you again. So, my name is Terry. I've been involved in the water sector for a couple of decades and in a bunch of different roles. And, in those activities and what I'm doing today, have the chance to work with a lot of different investors. And so Ed asked me today to talk about how the ability to value the co-benefits of projects and investments can impact investment decisions of nature-based, but also I'm going to talk about some other solutions because I think it's interesting to look at that. So because my background is really water, I'm really going to talk about wastewater and use that to illustrate some points and some themes that I'm sure we will hear over and over again during these sessions. So it didn't take us long to realize the benefits of wastewater treatment and how that impacts human health and the environment. And early wastewater treatment processes really involved taking sewage away and putting it someplace, where it could be treated always, and initially through natural processes, which I think is quite interesting. Over time, those natural mechanisms became understood and were designed into engineered systems for treatment, whether they were nature-based green infrastructure or, the more gray infrastructure that we're more accustomed to. But projects like that always require investment. And anytime there's an investment, there needs to be analysis and a business case to balance the economic investment against the risk and returns. And as always, as we know, investors like certainty and predictability. So, the evaluation criteria became quite simple and easy, where, the cost of being able to reduce pollution from one level to another was, weighed against the cost to provide that and, what people were willing to pay for that. So it became a pretty easy formula of, cost and removal of certain pollutants and, what people would pay for that. However, this view in this process is really imperfect because it takes a limited view of the treatment and doesn't really look at, all of the benefits that are there. And, that unfortunately limits how decision-making is sometimes made. So remember, the purpose of wastewater treatment is really to minimize the consequences of the pollution that create all the problems that we're familiar with. So pollution that results in algal blooms, fish kills, our inability to enjoy the beach or rivers or lakes or streams. But despite that, the way that the investment decision-making and the analysis worked, it focused on reduction of certain pollutants. So it became really linked to how much does it cost to remove a certain amount of pollutants or removing other constituents, but it was related to the action rather than the purpose of wastewater treatment. And Ed, I know that, you and I understood that, and, it was always frustrating to see, how things weren't considered in a more holistic, comprehensive way, because the benefits beyond just removing the pollutants were very, very obvious. But the trouble and the challenge was that there was really no comprehensive way to quantify the real value of having a thriving fishery that you could harvest fish from to feed the community, or the benefits to well-being of being able to enjoy the beach with your friends and family. So it was really quite frustrating, and I would say really imperfect system for investment decision-making as it related to wastewater and other projects, stormwater management and things like that. But what we saw is that with the increased interest in impact investing and the interest in sustainability and resiliency and the recognition of the link between ESG performance and profitability, tools started to become available to begin to value these other co-benefits beyond just the removal of a pollutant. And you would start to see investors consider some of those things, and their decisions on investing in projects would be influenced by things like CO2, water footprint, energy efficiency. But it was always really difficult to capture everything, including some of the social benefits. And there was really no comprehensive methodology to value the co-benefits or the costs of different solutions or the costs of inaction or different scenarios. So there was really a need to see these robust and comprehensive methodologies. And I think that's where Restore the Earth and EcoMetrics really fills a void in terms of providing a critical tool that values all of the benefits of the projects, including these social impacts and benefits, and really provides a better tool to allow comprehensive and informed investment decision-making. And I think the ability to provide this comprehensive qualification is really creating new opportunities in the investment world. First, I think the ability to value all of the benefits really encourages favorable valuation and use of nature-based systems, which are often much cheaper and much simpler and really offer far more co-benefits quite often than these gray engineered infrastructure. And I'm seeing that more and more on projects and when I speak with investors. The other opportunity that's creating is that the ability to value and communicate the benefits and the real costs of inaction of all of these co-benefits really creates a different type of stakeholder engagement that changes the discussions from the NIMBY, not in my backyard, to a yes, please, because the complete story can be told that creates additional value and that includes things like reputational and brand value and social license to operate, which are increasingly important in a culture where awareness about environmental and social value is increasing. And then finally, the ability to assess the values of all the co-benefits can dramatically change the risk return profiles of investments that encourage investments in projects, whether they're green or gray, that drive new innovation and impact. So I see lots of projects now, where people are using constructed wetlands for wastewater treatment, doing nutrient removal in ornamental waterways, and these kind of platforms and evaluation methodologies also change the economics and investability of things like humanitarian projects and the inclusion of renewable energy in projects. So I think it's really, really important that these tools are now available to make it easier to make much more informed and comprehensive investment decisions around water, again, whether that's wastewater, stormwater management, or other projects. So I'm really excited and encouraged to see how these new methodologies like EcoMetrics will change investment decision-making to take more advantage of nature-based systems that offer really outstanding co-benefits in many cases, and also other innovation that creates greater impact. So I do see a real change in the investment community now at how they look at projects that before may not have made economic sense based on their criteria, but that really offer opportunities to create, far greater impact.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Terry. That was a very interesting insight. So now I'm going to switch over to Michael from Silicon Ranch, who has yet another perspective and perspective from this, and then we'll have a little discussion afterwards. So it's all yours, Michael.
All right. Thank you, Ed. And great to speak with everyone today. And Terry and Anna, this is exciting. So my name is Michael Bowdy. I'm the Director of Regenerative Energy and Land Management at Silicon Ranch. Just to give a quick overview of what we do every day. Silicon Ranch is we're one of the largest independent power producers in the US. And we're also the US solar platform for Shell, for Royal Dutch Shell. So we're the developer and then the long-term owner of utility scale solar power plants. That's actually we actually have a fairly unique business model in the solar industry. Most developers will build a project and then find basically an asset management firm, or they'll sell the project. What that results in is that the community where that project was built doesn't really know who its long-term partner is going to be. So our long-term ownership has been a pretty valuable model for us. And I think it's important to understand how we were founded and where we developed that model. About 10 years ago, the former Tennessee governor, Phil Bredesen, and two of his top economic development officials, when they left the governor house, they started Silicon Ranch. And in a way, it was really a continuation of their economic development goals while they were all in office. So this is really a big driver to our company, is this commitment to community and making lasting economic impacts in these communities where we develop our projects. Our core business is developing custom energy solutions for our corporate customers. So we partner with utilities, electric co-ops, and corporates to meet their energy procurement needs. And there's an evolution of that need. In the beginning, first, these corporate customers, they really wanted to diversify their energy mix through purchasing renewable energy credits, RECs. And then customers wanted to clean up their own utility grid through power purchase agreements. And then, corporations moved more into let's clean up our supply chains and let's leverage our suppliers to make better change. And now we're finding this opportunity that through energy procurement choices, we can even optimize impacts and increase these co-benefits just from making energy procurement choices. A lot of the projects we develop are in fairly remote, rural, and economically depressed counties. And so this evolution is that now we can make social impact through the energy procurement choice. And that's been an exciting and interesting development for us. And in a way, what we're trying to do is meet that customer demand. So we're pretty bullish in finding ways to meet the customer needs for this. And ultimately, we're trying to build better power plants with more impacts that are more relevant for our customers' needs, making local relevant impact. I think it's important to note here and just maybe give a description of a utility scale solar power plant. We're fairly land intensive. So these are ground mounted tracking systems is what we build. So they follow the sun from the east to the west. Long rows of solar panels are oriented north to south. And the industry has traditionally viewed the land management and vegetation management needs as a liability. We have to manage that land one way or the other. A big operational footprint of ours is the Southeast United States. Vegetation grows rapidly down there. So again, the industry would view that as a liability, something simply that came at an operational expense, and we need to abate vegetation. I view land and vegetation as a biological asset. So when we manage that as a biological asset, we can shift that operational expense into a value, and we can deliver these valuable ecosystem services on that land base that now we control. Again, we have a unique business model where we own our projects long-term. That mostly includes the real estate as well. So while other solar projects are on leased land and have a short-term perspective, we're able to take a long-term perspective and for the most part have full control over our land management. That includes lands outside of our array fencing. And so we have additional opportunity for restoration opportunities there. To put this in context, NREL estimates that by 2030 in the US, we'll have 3 to 6 million acres of solar development. This is likely going to be on agricultural land. As solar developers, we need a fairly flat site with a good solar resource. It's the same land that got plowed up centuries ago. If you put it in context, in aggregate, we're going to be developing a relatively small amount of prime agricultural land, but at the local level, it is a very real concern. People are concerned that we are taking land out of agricultural production. And so this land use competition it's kind of a hot button item right now for us, which brings me to my job. I feel like I have a quite unique job in the solar industry and within my company. I get to focus all day on co-locating renewable energy generation with regenerative agricultural production. And so once again, we have to manage the land under our solar panels one way or the other. So with I have a background, a formal training in soil science and holistic management and regenerative branching. And so I approach this very different than other land managers in the industry. I'm integrating regenerative grazing practices in a way to meet our performance specs of our veg management program. So we need to remove the vegetation so it doesn't shade out our modules. But by using these specific nuanced grazing practices, specifically we're using adaptive multi-paddock grazing. Research is showing that we are delivering ecosystem services through using these techniques. And so, there's multiple goals to the program that I'm developing and that I operate. We believe we can reduce our operational expense of our land management strategy. Ultimately, this will lower the levelized cost of energy for us and for our customers. We're wanting to build new revenue streams through environmental asset generation. EcoMetrics is helping us with that. I'll get to that shortly. Ultimately, though, my job is to really optimize and expand our social, environmental, and economic impacts of the project. So through combining agriculture and solar energy, we're seeing some pretty exciting outcomes. Let me just paint a picture of one of the projects that we're developing. Let's say it's on 1,000 acres. I probably have maybe 700 acres of that covered in solar panels. And then I contract with local or regional ranchers who are qualified in AMP style grazing. And they bring on large flocks of sheep to manage that vegetation under our solar models or modules. And remember, we have to plant grass one way or the other, right, to reduce erosion. The industry typically would try to plant the cheapest possible grass, and we'd try to get the cheapest possible mowing contract for that. Again, I view this as a biological asset. I actually view this as a grassland ecosystem. So in my opinion, the solar industry right now has probably the largest opportunity in the world to restore and install functioning grassland ecosystems. So I contract my ranchers to come help me install and manage and get established my grasslands, and then use their regenerative grazing techniques to, number one, manage the vegetation so that we don't decrease our energy performance, but then to increase those ecosystem services. This is essentially biomimicry, right? So what we're doing is mimicking the natural relationship between large herds of grazing animals and grasslands. So think about bison being pushed around the prairie by wolves and fire. That happened for millions of years, and we developed 15 feet of topsoil, very carbon-rich topsoils. So I mimic that. I use domesticated livestock, sheep in this case. We're trying to develop a PV architecture for cattle, but that's another topic. Then we use electric fence and qualified grazing management to be the predator that moves the domesticated livestock around. So this is how we're able to deliver ecosystem services, really. We're trying to align our management strategy with what kind of naturally would have kept that grassland functioning and healthy. With all this, we knew we're making more impacts of our projects. We knew that co-locating agriculture and energy has additional co-benefits. We had no idea how to measure that. We could put a photo up on our website and there's a little bit of PR there, right? We can tell a good story. We knew we had to go further than that. We had to quantify and verify that story because, again, we were wanting to meet our customers' goals for more impactful projects that are more regionally relevant to them and their business. Those customers also didn't really know how to do that. And seemingly didn't have a lot of tools at their disposal. So that's where Restore the Earth came into my life. So we were introduced to Restore the Earth and EcoMetrics, maybe a year and a half ago, and over that year and a half, we've been working with Ed and his team to modify and customize the EcoMetrics methodology, and to develop a new module that for applications within the solar industry specifically. So we've branded this, the new module as Regenerative Energy EcoMetrics, and that's really helping us to capture that full value of our co-location projects and really provide that as a service to our customers. And so throughout 2019, we developed that module. And at the same time, we were designing and constructing a 139 megawatt DC power plant in Southwest Georgia. This project is to power a Facebook data center. And so they were keen on this program, but we were just kind of getting our legs under us. And so it's been a pretty exciting design build process over the past year and a half. So this project, it's housed on 1,500 acres. And again, about 700 acres of those are under solar modules. Totally randomly and by chance, these projects ended up in a community in Southwest Georgia where a world-renowned rancher lives and has developed a very phenomenal outfit down there, the White Oak Pastures Farm. And Will Harris and his team down there have been leading the effort on regenerative ranching and been working with companies like General Mills to quantify and verify that, White Oak is in fact producing a climate positive or a carbon negative beef product. So, with this opportunity to work with Will Harris and his team, and understanding that his grazing practices did deliver these ecosystem services, we contracted White Oak to manage that land base for us. And so, any given day, things fluctuate in when you're at this scale of livestock management. But we've got about 2,000 or 3,000 sheep on that project, and he's also raising anywhere between 10 and 20,000 pastured poultry on our project as well. What's really interesting here is that the PV architecture itself creates this amazing symbiosis where it's creating shelter and housing for the animals themselves. Shade in the middle of the summer in Georgia is a very underutilized and undervalued resource. So the shade helps the livestock production. It makes it more efficient to convert grass into protein. And then it also helps in inclement weather. Anna and I were just talking yesterday actually about the intersection of technology and environment or nature. And as Hurricane Sally just rolled through Georgia, our modules were, we have a software with our partner NextTracker, and the True Capture technology helped us put the modules in a perfect position to basically deflect the wind and not damage the asset. And I've got a photo I'll share at the end. All the poultry are right underneath it, also being protected by the PV. So it's a pretty exciting realization that we just came to yesterday, that again, the symbiosis of these two operations is just very exciting. So really what we've now created, we've created a solar savanna. It's a synthetic savanna, and we're able to manage or optimize our energy generation while producing healthy food products, while delivering ecosystem services, and ultimately we know we're increasing the social impact of that project. White Oak Pastures has upped their, created new jobs, not only for shepherds on site, but also in their slaughter facilities and in their sales and marketing departments. So that's a little bit of the operations, but then we applied EcoMetrics to the project. And so Ed and his team were with us down in Georgia, where we engaged that community. We learned about their goals, their concerns, and kind of how they valued the energy project, how they valued the ranching that was happening in their community, and how they value the combination of the two. We always have some level of community engagement. It's never been that robust and that formal. And so this also gave us a very effective tool at engaging with our community, and gave us a roadmap that really seemed valuable to them, and most definitely is valuable to us. And so, we used the EcoMetrics. We were able to evaluate the various scenarios on the land. How do we manage under the solar array best? How do we manage the roughly 800 acres outside the solar array best? How do we maximize outcomes on that as well? We're still in the process of making decisions on that, but the tool itself allowed us to think through how to do that. And then it gave us, of course, our the estimated value of our environmental assets that are possibly generated on that site. So that helped us with our cost benefit analysis. And so then we ran our EcoMetrics, and we're very excited about the outcomes here. Of the total aggregate value of that project, we can attribute 34% of that value to just the solar plant. We can attribute 11% of that value to just the agriculture on that land base. But the combination of the two created the largest by far. Was a 55% value of the total value was created by combining those two. And so this was really eye-opening for us. We knew there was value we were creating, but the multiplier effect was in fact there, right? 2 + 2 = 5 in this equation. So, with the outcome, we've been learning kind of how to, again, we're providing this almost to a service to our customers. And so, we're still learning how to package that, how to report that. So we've been working with Restore the Earth and Facebook to report that value, assign the value to Facebook, and ultimately find out how do we move forward on future projects with the same approach. And very happy to report that this is recognized by that particular customer as an added value for us. We are going to apply this to future projects. So we feel like we've been quite successful in meeting their goal of finding new value to their energy procurement choices. Much more so than just telling them how warm and fuzzy this co-location is. No, we actually have verified outcomes here. And what's even more exciting is that our other corporate customers are taking notice of this. And so, we're really, we're using regenerative energy and regenerative energy ecometrics as part of our sales deck, for these companies. And I also want to talk a little bit that ecometrics is part of a new standard we're creating that can be used within the solar industry, because we want others to do this as well. And so actually Restore the Earth did help us also develop the regenerative energy standard. And the ecometrics platform is intended to assist an implementer of the standard to meet all of the indicators, to meet the conformance requirements, and ultimately the reporting requirements. So we're very excited about the standards combined with ecometrics for us. And this approach is also then aligned with the IUCN's global standard for nature-based solutions. And I think what's really important here is that we're being very conscious about aligning our program with global efforts to address multiple societal challenges. This is going to, we hope, give credibility and structure to our co-location projects and others. And I think, Terry, I'd love to follow up with you, because I think having investment in that and having credibility in our approach, knowing we are making valuable change, knowing it is scalable and aligned with other scaled strategies, I think is important for us. So, and then we're asking our corporate customers, who are driving the energy transition. They're the ones installing new solar capacity to meet their data centers needs specifically, right? So we're asking them to push harder for better power plants. That we need them to ask the questions, what can your solar power plant, how does it impact the local community? How does it impact the environment? And so this is, our goals was to raise the solar industry's impact and land management strategy specifically, but it's really exciting to see our customers really embrace this new product. And it's really exciting to have the metrics behind it that we otherwise didn't really have. So, we're breaking new ground in our industry. There's a lot of challenges to doing it. There's a lot of reward for doing it. I think we're trying to push the envelope on what's possible here and innovating, not just through our long-term ownership approach, not just in how do we scale the co-location of energy and ag, but in, offering our customers these quantified social impacts, and using the ecometrics methodology has really just been core to that, and providing verified impacts for their goals. Ultimately, we're trying to bundle these type of outcomes: social impact, environmental, asset generation. We're trying to bundle that in power purchase agreements and make a more, holistic product or a more holistic choice for their energy procurement opportunities. So, what we're trying to do is ask solar to just do more. We're asking our customers to demand more. We want to see more positive impact on our environment, more positive impact in our communities. So that's our effort. That's how we've used ecometrics, and just real excited for the rest of this chat, and hopefully following up with everybody after this.
Excellent. Boy, thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. We've heard from, this is very interesting, because we've heard from a chemical company, a water infrastructure perspective, and the solar and energy perspective, yet cross-cutting all of those is this issue of the value of social value that comes from these kind of projects. And I think that's a unifying concept across the board here. What I'd like to do in the time we have left is I'd like to ask the folks a question. And Michael's, I'm going to come to you last because I reformulated what I wanted to ask you in the sense that I want to tease something out that I think might be interesting to the Social Value International's membership and so on that I think might be of interest. But for Anna, from your perspective, why does Dow, being a technology company, value nature and advocate for including it in its value in operations and collaborations like you're doing with the IOC? And I think you've talked a little bit about that, but I'm just trying to see if you get a sense of that aspect of considering nature as almost a feedstock, almost kind of an input into your process.
Right, right. Yeah, no, that's a very good question, Ed. And you're right. It's we are the first amongst our peers to set the goal. And when we did that, I'll be honest with you, there were a lot of barriers to take down internally in adopting and running with that goal. Again, you know, you're dealing with a whole bunch of engineers that are used to their great infrastructure, like Terry was talking about, right? They know how to build it. They know how the concrete will work. They know how the water filtration systems will work. They did not believe that nature could do that, right? Well, and I would add to that, though, the other barrier that I think we are still in the process of helping overcome through pilots and case studies and our efforts in Louisiana is one of them is the regulatory push, right? So that was the other area where we still continue and we need to do more work on creating more repeatable case studies so that our regulations could allow us to do more. So part of it, and so that's where kind of part of my answer, I guess, in there is that on one hand, Dow has realized decades ago through our sustainability journey that we are intimately connected into the ecosystems that we operate in, be that on the social level as the right to exist and operate in, especially in the Gulf Coast, where we have in US at least, that's our biggest aggregate of manufacturing capacity, right? We have to deserve to be there. Of course, regulatory comes in, but we do believe in voluntary action as the driving force. And so that's the social license to operate. But at the same time, to your point, we do use a lot of natural resources as feedstocks, right? Water is a very critical component to our cooling towers, among other things. Of course, it's a solvent. There's all sorts of elements, and then you have situation where that's quote unquote free, right? So again, we found ourselves in the situations where the perception was that it was free and abundant, say water, that same water conversation, right? And it will always be there. But then over the years, we started noticing and measuring. So that's where, of course, it helps that we are a science and technology company. We do track things. So that was helpful to win that argument internally, is that, look, water as a resource, as one example, will not always be there, and we are starting to run risk. So to Terry's point, that did come down to a bit of a risk-benefit internal analysis and additional exposure to some of the progressive views from our value chain partners downstream. So it was a combination of things where eventually it culminated in goal setting. And it's, to me, it's also the highlight in that is that how we approach the valuing nature in monetary terms. But to Michael's points, exact same thing. We're still internally using we've built some tools because back in 5 years ago, we didn't have access to EcoMetrics. So we had to build some approximations, and we've partnered with TNC also, but fundamentally, this is the whole idea of developing that tracking ability of the value is really where we had hoped that we'll end up, right, in a few years after we had set that goal. And that whole realization that we have to, or a subscription to the notion that we have to leave our space where we operate better than we found it. I'm not a big camper, but I hear that's the camping rule, right? But that's where we have subscribed, luckily, as a corporation. And that's what keeps driving the decision to invest in nature and start valuing it more appropriately versus, it's free water. So let's just use it.
Excellent.
It's a journey though. So it's, to Michael's point, it's a continuous journey. Yeah. So it's gonna be a lot more battles along the way. Not every single engineer is on board yet.
That's and Terry and I used to work together at Veolia, a very traditional infrastructure company. It's been around for a century and a half. So you're right. Not every engineer. So thank you, Anna. So Terry, let's segue that and say that you've in your discussion comments, you suggested that this ability to quantify co-benefits can encourage investment that drives innovation. Do you want to touch on an example maybe that you've been dealing with?
Sure.
Plays out?
Thanks, Ed. So, fascinating stories from both Anna and Michael that I really enjoyed hearing. And, I think that, nature-based solutions really offer a lot of benefits. They're cheaper, they're simpler. I'm sure, having the animals, do the grazing that you're doing, Michael, is a lot cheaper than, other solutions that you would have looked at. And so, I think there is a case for nature-based solutions when you can consider all of these co-benefits. What I'm going to talk about, though, is really just the value of the methodology and being able to look at all of those for just a traditional example. And then I will talk about how this helps encourage the use of nature-based solutions. So like wastewater treatment, I'm working on projects to develop land-based aquaculture, which is basically a big swimming pool to grow salmon in. So like wastewater treatment, the traditional economic evaluation and investment criteria look at, the inputs and, what are you putting in, how much does it cost, and what are people willing to pay for what comes out. And this is a pretty risky venture. It's not been done in North America a lot. It's done in other places of the world. So when investors look at this, they look at it in a very traditional way of, there's a few inputs and a few outputs, and the analysis is quite simple, and it looks too risky for them. But when you consider what these projects are doing, where, we are not growing fish in farms in the sea where, fish waste and food and things are accumulated, or medicines are dumped in that affect the local ecosystem, or you're not flying fish from Norway or Chile to the US, there's a lot of benefits there that if you can quantify and validate them and monetize some of them, it really changes the economic outlook of these projects. So, in addition to those benefits of, recycling all the water, less energy consumption, less carbon footprint, we're also addressing issues around food security and sustainability, but we're looking at building some of these, I would say, communities that are not very economically well off, and the ability to value the contributions to the local community for creating jobs and improving their food security and giving them ways to improve their overall well-being really changes how investors look at these projects. And something before that was seen as risky with a low return all of a sudden becomes these really, really interesting projects like Silicon Ranch. And you continue to extend beyond just capturing those obvious benefits, but being able to quantify and monetize them. And you talk about like Michael has about co-locating and using some of the waste from these production facilities to do agriculture or other things. It really changes how people look at projects. So even for projects that don't use nature-based systems, I think the ability to use comprehensive methodology like EcoMetrics really allows people to understand the true value of projects and really look at them in a different way that really encourages investment and improvement and innovation and impact. So, again, nature-based solutions, clear case in my mind for that. But for traditional infrastructure and projects, I think there's a lot of contribution made by comprehensive methodologies like EcoMetrics.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. So Michael, I'm going to make it a two-part question then, because I'm going to ask you the original question, but then I'm going to ask you to tease out something. So what I was going to ask is if you can talk a little bit about some specific examples of the very local community benefits, for example, and you could, whether it's, I know that with White Oak Pastures, it touched on tourism, jobs there, and so on. So you could touch on that. But the other thing, if you could take and we only have a few minutes left, but if you could also, you've been using the term regenerative agriculture. And I think one of the things that's very interesting is what, some people say sustainable agriculture, and they almost mean that interchangeably, but I know that's a unique term. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that for the benefit of the participants to understand that this is really next generation agriculture.
Sure. Maybe my answer is going to reflect both answers or both questions. Actually, what surprised me mostly with our co-location work or keeping solar land in agricultural production is that local community. Again, these are mostly very rural communities with a strong and long agricultural history. So the heartfelt community member, it's an egg, you're going to take it out of my agricultural production. And they may not have even had a connection to likely the cotton or peanut that was being grown in Georgia, or the corn and soy in the Midwest. But the fact that they had ag land is very valuable for these rural communities. And so we're able to keep that, and we're really trying strongly to design that essence into our projects. We are truly ranching these lands. We just have an extra use on top of them. And so then the second part of your question, so regenerative ag for me is a way to produce food while working with the natural environment and restoring that ecosystem. Likely it has been damaged prior to us implementing any regenerative agricultural practices for various reasons, right? And I mentioned the evolution of the solar industry, where we were producing RECs and selling RECs to companies, and then we were building power plants maybe on their facility, and now we're building power plants in a economically depressed region near their facility. That's been the evolution of that. It's actually very similar to the agriculture world, where we've moved, not fully, but we're moving from conventional, we moved towards organic, and then we moved towards sustainable. And at this point, sustainable is not enough. We can't just maintain the status of our soil health, because it's been degraded. And so now it's our job as land managers and agricultural producers to come up with strategies to improve the soil health, to increase biodiversity of our soil microorganisms. It's our job to increase or diversify our production practices. That builds more resiliency within our production model. The economics of regenerative agriculture appear to be much better for a lot of the producers. They don't have the heavy input costs. The system is fairly self-organizing and self-contained. One enterprise provides the input for the next enterprise. That's people are integrating grazing, AMP-style grazing with grain production. So I think it's just the same concept we're all really working on, is using the waste of one to provide the input for the other, trying to make that ecosystem or whatever we're doing better than it was when we found it.
Excellent. Wonderful. I'm glad we had the opportunity to take a couple minutes to explain that regenerative. And that was a learning experience for me as well. When I got involved with Silicon Ranch, they use this term very specifically, and I wanted to make sure that everybody understood.
and let me just say, it's an evolution as well within that, right? There's, some people are trying to put metrics. What is regenerative? We're still figuring that out, right? We're still all, to Anna's point, like, this is a journey. Like, it's not all working perfectly, but we are all trying to improve our own respective impact. So
I think that's an absolutely excellent point to close our session. I do want to sincerely thank the three of you. I knew you'd be great because I've had the opportunity and the pleasure of working with you in the past. But I think that the interplay and the tapestry that you were able to weave together from all your different perspectives, I think is going to be very interesting. And I hope for the attendees of this Social Value International Conference to see that there's many different places to find social value if you know how to look and how to do it. And historically, when people talk about social value, they don't think about the environment and ecosystem services. They're thinking about human services and health and those kind of issues, which are very important. But this is a whole new world of social value that I think is really gaining more and more credibility, and these perspectives really help. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening. If you have any questions, and I really encourage you to reach out, because this is some great stories, and you only heard little tiny bits of what's actually going on out there. So please do reach out through the SVI folks, and we'd be happy to kind of get back to you. So thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's session at Social Value Matters 2020. Once again, if you do have any questions for the speakers on today's session, please do ask the questions below in the box, and the speakers will get back to you as soon as they possibly can. On behalf of everybody at Social Value International and Social Value Canada, I just want to thank all of the speakers for the incredible sessions that they've done today, and all of you for attending. We hope that you find the rest of this week's conference as interesting as you found today, and it will see you soon at another one of the events.